This is a Rogue Media Network podcast. This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Central Texas Life, and it is a joy to have Dr. Raj Sinha with us with Advent Health. You are their head of orthopedics.
That's right.
And we had a chance to visit not too long ago, and I'm just so pleased that you could come and have a little more extended sit down with me to talk about your world and the inventions you have been a part of, and just what it means to you as a physician to help people who have injuries with their bones and joints. As we age, knees and hips and all those things we're all kind of concerned about.
So true. Thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, you didn't always want to be an orthopedic guy, though, did you?
Well, I wanted to be a football player initially.
Okay.
But my parents said no to that. I'm 6'1", 220. I'm not really football player size, but I did play rugby in college and medical school. But no, when I went to medical school, I wanted to be a plastic surgeon, actually. Mm-hmm. Not so much a cosmetic plastic surgeon, but a reconstructive plastic surgeon, because I just found, this is back in the 80s, I just found some of the technology and techniques that they were doing to transplant thumbs and fingers and repair, badly injured body parts was just really intriguing to me. And that was my plan all through medical school. And then through a quirk of fate, I wound up doing an orthopedic rotation as a third-year medical student. And the residents that I was working with were guys that I played rugby with. And they put a power saw in my hand for the first time. Actually, it was a drill the first time. And I was hooked.
Black & Decker, here we come.
It's pretty amazing. But you get to use power tools to fix people's injuries. Pretty good gig.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me like as far as medical work goes, and so you need to have a lot of strength. I mean, I see a big guy like you, that you kind of need that power that you possess too, just in an operation. Maybe I don't know.
It's funny you say that because the old saying about orthopedic surgeons is strong as an ox, half as smart.
No, I've not heard that.
It's a medical school joke. But
okay.
But the point I'm getting at is that you don't actually have to have a lot of strength. It's more about technique, and I think historically that's kept a lot of women out of the field, but fortunately that's starting to change now. Mm-hmm. And it's just, if you understand the biomechanics of what you're trying to do, then you just have to have the right technique to set broken bones and pop joints back into place and stuff like that.
Well, and you kind of, I guess, in your practice, sort of focus on knees. Is that right? Although you do shoulder,
my practice has been primarily hip replacement and knee replacement, specifically those two things for the last 27 years or so. And I've been in academics. I was in private practice for a long time in Palm Springs, California. When we moved to Texas for a combination of things to get out of California as well as to be closer to family here in the Austin area, I thought I was retiring. I had some consulting things I was doing. I was working on developing some new prostheses and things like that. And I was doing some medical legal work. And the consulting thing was a little bit slow to get off the ground. But my wife, who works from home, was finally like, you need to get out of the house.
You are underfoot.
Yeah, you're underfoot. Well, first she tried to give me projects to get me out of her. Fix this, fix that.
Use those power tools for something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And then anyway, so I decided, I'm probably not quite ready to put down my scalpel.
Right.
At that point, I was only 57, so.
Yeah, I'd say, you got a lot of left there. So Advent Health, let's talk about Advent Health and that wonderful organization. I mean, it truly is a faith-based organization.
That's right. So how did I wind up there? Is that the question you're
that's
asking?
That's the question,
yeah, that's a good question.
I knew you wanted to get to Central Texas. But...
Well, I was already in Central Texas.
Okay.
We had moved to Horseshoe Bay and we're living there.
I love Horseshoe Bay.
Yeah, so we had a condo there.
Oh.
It was a little bit rural, I think, for my wife's taste. Mm-hmm. I was very happy to be out in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, so we were there, and when I started looking for a job a little more seriously, I wanted to go someplace that didn't have a really big joint replacement program, but a place that felt that there was a need to develop it. Because, listen, I love to do the surgery, and I love when patients do well, but I've done 10,000 of them. At some point, it's not that technically challenging or intellectually stimulating to do the surgery itself. But it's more about harnessing the power of the people and building a program and getting everybody to row the boat in the same direction. That's interesting to me. I also have a background in process improvement, with all those things like Toyota production system and things like that. And lastly, I have a business model. So I did a mini MBA at University of Pittsburgh. So I have a little bit of a business background. So I wanted to incorporate all those things to develop a program that didn't exist in Central Texas. And, Scott and White has a great program in Temple, but when you start moving west, there's nothing all the way to Abilene.
Right. And so Advent Health, they're located in Killeen.
Correct.
And then a satellite clinic in Lampasas.
And one in Harker Heights.
And in Harker Heights as well. It makes then that healthcare accessible to people who are kind of spread out.
It's true. I think that, one of the things I've learned over the years is that people will travel certain distances for their physicians, but they won't travel those distances for physical therapy and occupational therapy and stuff like that. So we at Advent have tried to go to the patients with a lot of those services. The physicians go to where they are to make it a little bit easier for them. It saves them a half an hour travel in each direction. So I think that's meaningful.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the inventions part of what you do, because you have over a 30-year career have really come up with a lot of innovative joints and things. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So artificial hips and artificial knees have been around since the early 70s, and they've gone through a lot of innovations and changes. And some of it had to do with manufacturing techniques, some of it had to do with surgical technical techniques so that more surgeons could do them, et cetera. And then there's a lot of stuff that had to do with patient outcomes. So in the early days, 70s I'm talking about, manufacturing was still a little bit primitive, and there were only so many options you had. For example, if you're doing a knee replacement, you had 3 sizes: small, medium, and large, and you had to make it work in everybody, right? So that's a challenge in and of itself. But as things evolved, the technical part of it got to be quite good. But the piece that was always missing, at least until semi-recently, was the patient outcome piece. For a long time, we as surgeons focused on what we thought was important, like how the x-rays look and the stability of the joint. And we created all these scoring methodologies, for example, like the Knee Society score that measures how well a patient is doing. And so we compare those things between prostheses, between surgeons, between techniques, all that sort of stuff. But the Knee Society score misses a big component of what makes patients happy after they get a joint replacement, which is the ability to do things that they love to do.
Right.
Doesn't ask that question at all.
Oh, really? Because
Right.
that's kind of why they do it.
Correct.
Aside
Right.
from the pain, obviously.
Yeah, well, the pain, but ultimately they want to get back to being active, functioning members of society, keep up with their grandkids,
Right.
all that sort of good stuff. So we were always missing that piece. And it wasn't until some research came out in the late 1990s, early 2000s that helped us quantify what it was that people were experiencing that we were missing. And the upshot was that they wanted to get better faster, and they wanted the joint to feel more like their normal joint. Like they were out of pain, but the knee was very foreign. They knew it was a foreign thing.
There was a foreign thing there.
Yeah, in their body. So we tried a lot of techniques, again, to address the first part of it, get better faster. And again, the incision length is not what makes the difference. It's how you control early surgical pain that allows people to get back to functioning quicker. So we figured that out. But we still had this sort of ceiling effect, which eventually I came to conclude was the prosthetic. When you're using metal and plastic, there's only so much you can do when you're putting it into a God-given joint that never was intended to have metal and plastic. Right? Nature never evolved that way. So fortunately, there was a company that had developed a manufacturing technique that allowed them to actually individually personalize the joint replacement to the shape, size, orientation contour of each person's knee. And I thought, this is the next step
Yeah.
in what they're doing. And so I actually reached out to them. They're like, oh, are you so-and-so? We know you from X, Y, and Z things that you've done. Like, yeah, that's who I am. They're like, oh, we would love to have you involved with this. So then we got in. So I was able to get involved with a group of forward-thinking, radical, maybe a little out-of-the-box thinkers about how we could take this manufacturing technology and turn it into artificial knee. So we did that. And we started putting them in 2011, and each device is made for the patient specifically. Whereas with every other system that every other company has, they pre-make the implants, and then the surgeon has to fit the pre-made implant to this patient's body.
Yeah, and I would have thought that's, you got a row of knee joints. Okay, that looks like she needs a size 6 or whatever, and so this is basically like 3D printing. It's like,
yeah,
in a way.
No, it actually is. So, what you were visualizing is exactly how it used to be.
Yeah, right.
You would go into surgery, and we would do X-rays and CAT scans and stuff like that ahead of time to help measure accurately the sizing the best you can. But then when you get into there, you're like, okay, these are my 8 sizes available to me. The preoperative templating showed it should be a size 5. I got the 5 in there, and it's not exactly a size 5. It's like a 4 3/4. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't exist. And there were things that we would do. When you're in between sizes, you either go up or you go down relative to the patient's bone. And there's pros and cons to each of those approaches. If you go up, it's a more stable joint generally. If you go down, it bends better. Well, a stable joint that doesn't bend is not something that makes anybody happy.
No, walking stiff-legged.
Yeah, a joint that bends really well but won't support you because it wobbles all over the place is not anybody's idea of a fun time. So we needed to come up with a solution. And so this, again, from if you look at the patient-reported outcome data, it would basically show that people were dissatisfied with their joint, and about 15% of people would be dissatisfied with their artificial knee, meaning they were out of pain, they were better than they were, but they were like, I really thought it was going to be better than this.
Thought it was going to be better than this.
And 15% of people are in between sizes. There's a direct correlation there.
Yeah. That just blew my mind when we talked before, and I learned about that because I thought how amazing. And then you can even pinpoint like where cuts need to be made and just sort of really specify for the surgeon.
That's correct. So the implant is important, but you got to put it in the right spot where it was intended to be put in. So how do you make that process foolproof, if you will? And so what we do is when we do the CAT scan of the leg, we pre-calculate what the right orientation of the leg should be, and then we give you a series of tools like Lego that snap onto the patient's bone to allow you to contour the bone to that orientation. So not only for sizing the implant, but creating the proper limb alignment.
That is incredible. Well, talking about knees, one question I've always, because I have friends who've had both done at the same time, they would say, never would I ever. What are your thoughts on doing both at one time? And then others say, yeah, might as well. And do you do them both at the same time or say?
So I do. And I have a very personal story about this because my wife had both of hers done at the same time almost exactly a year ago.
Really?
Yeah. And honestly, I tried to talk her out of it. And so basically, it kind of boils down to this. The first thing is each operation is a big deal with a certain amount of risk. And when you put 2 of those same operations on top of one another, the risk increases. And so the first consideration, is the patient healthy enough, and do they have certain medical conditions that say we really shouldn't do 2 at the same time?
2 at the same time.
Right, because it's too risky for that particular person.
Right. To be under anesthesia for.
Yeah, that too. I mean, the anesthesia time, it's usually heart disease and lung disease. If you have pre-existing conditions there, then it's the risk factor starts to outweigh the benefit factor if you do both at the same time. So that's one issue. The second issue then is age. As we get older, we take longer to heal. And so it takes longer to heal from 2 versus 1, and you're slower, and that leads to a whole host of other medical problems becoming worse. And then the third factor for me is, are you tough enough to do it? which is that's a hard thing to read because
Yeah.
everybody thinks they're tough, but this is where the rubber hits the road, if you will. And plus you have the support systems around you to be able to deal with things. And so yes, to answer your question, I do them. I go through that process of checking off boxes to make sure the patient's going to fit the criteria to do it and have a good chance of being successful. But I still prefer doing one at a time. I think people are generally happier. The other thing that I've learned is that once you get one knee replaced, the other one somehow seems to hurt less. Now, I don't know if that's a subconscious thing because you're like, I'm not going through this again.
I'm not going to do that again.
Or is it a subconscious thing where you're putting all your weight
Right.
on the good knee
Yeah.
and you're therefore protecting the bad knee?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also had people get one done and go, oh, that was so easy. Let's just get the other one done. What are we waiting for?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I've
Well,
had people go, I'm never going through that again, ever.
Yeah.
But then they come back about 2 years later and get
Yeah,
it
so when the pain was bone on bone,
Exactly.
that's a great explanation. I appreciate that. So let's move up from the knee to the hips because I would assume a lot more older patients for sure with the
Yeah, so the average age of hip and knee replacement patients in America is about 65. And the rest of the world is actually a little bit lower in some countries, a little bit higher in other countries.
really.
Yeah, so lower in other countries because there's more post-trauma arthritis that leads to joint replacements. And in some countries like England and Canada, the age is a little bit older because their health systems just make patients wait longer. So we're sort of in the middle of that, and the age is actually getting younger in America because some of the things that we've tried to rebuild joints and reverse arthritis just haven't been as successful as we had hoped. And so joint replacement becomes sort of the de facto last resort that somebody in their 50s would be like, why am I going to suffer for another 20 years?
I know life's too short,
Exactly.
really. To
There's no
be in that
guarantee I
much-
have 20 years, right? So
Yeah. I think my mother-in-law was I think she was in her 80s when she had her hip replaced. But she said, I wish I had not waited, and that life is too short to be in that kind of pain where you can barely walk to
Right.
get across the room. Yeah, it's really neat though to talk to you about these things that with wear and tear and age and so forth. Your skills are certainly needed. What's your best advice for somebody like me doesn't have that issue now? Want to try to avoid that. Of course, obviously, I don't want to fall.
yeah.
Stay off the floor, as
Yeah.
they say. But what are what's good advice for protecting those joints?
Yeah, so if you don't mind me getting on a soapbox a little bit. So I've done 10,000 joint replacements, treated 100,000 patients in my career. I've never cured anybody of any disease, right? And part of it is a practical nature of being an orthopedic surgeon. I fix broken bones, I replace your joints. Okay, great. But the other thing is that our healthcare system is kind of backwards in that we don't treat healthy people and emphasize wellness enough. We treat sick people and primarily their symptoms. We don't even treat their diseases. We just treat their symptoms. So we're a sickness industry, not a health industry. So we need to rethink that. And so to answer your question, you got to focus on prevention.
Yeah.
So what are the 4 most important things for lifestyle improvement, anti-aging, and preventative health? The first is take care of your back. Not only is it important for how your arms and legs function, but it protects your organs, your visceral organs, your heart, your lungs, everything in your abdomen, and they work better when biomechanically they're protected. So that's the first thing.
So how do you protect your back?
Core strengthening,
Right.
flexibility of your back.
Okay.
And it starts in your 40s.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an important thing. The second thing is mobility. You gotta maintain flexibility of your joints. The joints themselves, the way that nutritional molecules get into the cartilage is through pressure gradients inside the joint. So when you move the joint, it creates a pressure wave through the cartilage, and that's how the nutrients are delivered to it. If you become less active, then the cartilage is not getting its nutrients, and it starts to degrade. So that's the second important thing. Mobility also has to do with strength. So you want to be strong. The stronger your muscles are around the joint, the more protected the joint is going to be. So you can improve strength by weight training, like lifting weights. You can improve strength by yoga, Pilates, things like that work on combination of flexibility and strength. Third thing is weight loss.
Yeah.
Everybody can lose 10 pounds. Not everybody, but most of us can lose 10 pounds.
Yeah, need to.
When you're talking about the hips and the knees and the ankles, when you lose 10 pounds, you take up to 70 pounds of force off of those joints, because your body is a system of levers. And so when you're adding weight, because the muscles are contracting and you're putting force on it when you're climbing stairs or running or jogging, it's not just your body weight, it's a multiple of your body weight. That is the amount of force that's being exerted on that joint. So if you lose 10 pounds, you take up to 70 pounds of pressure off of your joints.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying, lose 10 pounds.
Yeah.
If you need to lose 20, lose 20. That'll take a lot of pressure off of your joints.
That'll take a lot of pressure off.
And you'll feel a lot better. In fact,
Yeah.
I've had patients who I've wanted them to lose weight because it decreases their risk of anesthesia and surgery. And so they've taken me up on it. They've lost 20, 30 pounds, and they come back and they say, my knees don't hurt anymore. I'm like, perfect.
I don't need you
We
now.
don't have to operate on you. How good is that? You've
that
just
is
avoided
great.
surgery by losing 30 pounds.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then the fourth thing is prevention.
Yeah.
That's the hardest, disease prevention, right? So, for example, if arthritis runs in your family, there's not a whole lot you can do about the genetics, but you got to really emphasize all the things I just talked about to prevent it. If heart disease runs in your family, you've got to really be aggressive in preventing the heart disease from becoming an issue for you. And that's, it's a lot of different things, but the long and the short of it is diet, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We literally are what we eat.
Yeah.
Our diet is the only source of a series of molecules called antioxidants. And the antioxidants will protect your proteins and your genes from degrading, because they actually go in and they scavenge the molecules that are trying to get at your DNA and your proteins. So you need to have a high antioxidant diet, which is green leafy vegetables, basically eat the rainbow.
Yeah.
Eat more of the rainbow than you think you need. And in the 50s, the recommendation was you needed 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. Well, that's great in the 50s, but our food is 1/3 as good as it was in the 50s. So you need like 10 to 15 per day.
In order to counteract all the processed foods and.
Yeah. So that was a long answer for your question.
That's a great. I mean,
that was my soapboxing.
That is such great. That is such great advice, and it's always such a delight to get to visit with you. And the more I learn about Advent Health, the more impressed I am with that delivery system for health for the people in Central Texas. And I know this is dropping on November 6th, which tonight, the big gala, Black and White Masquerade, Unmask the Giving, and I'll be seeing you later in the day for that. It's going to be a great way to help raise money for Advent Health. But I like to end these little visits with a little questionnaire.
Sure.
It's similar to the one the late great James Lipton would use for Inside the Actor's Studio, if you remember that. And this is my take on it. What is your favorite word, Dr. Sinha?
Oh boy, it's a tough one. My favorite work word is efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For an orthopedic surgeon, I would say, yeah.
My favorite non-work word is football.
That's right. That and golf. I know you've got your tie pin too.
More football than golf.
More football than golf. Well, 'tis the season. That is for sure. For sure. What is your least favorite word?
I can't.
Right.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
I hear that from a lot of people. What turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
For me, again, in the work world, it is seeing patients do well. I think I shared the story with you before about my father having a knee replacement that I did.
That you did,
That I
yeah.
did, yeah. My sister, and by that time I had done 6,000 or 7,000. And although I took care of all my patients really well, my sister sort of hit it home for me in that, how often do people, how lucky are you that you get to give your father a pain-free joint and let him walk again? I'm thinking, I never realized it from that perspective before. I didn't cry this time.
Yeah. I mean, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. What turns you off creatively or spiritually or emotionally?
I think it's people who struggle to find their happiness and point the blame outwards, which I think we're all guilty of, including myself. So I think that's the biggest thing that you want to see people overcome, that I want to see people overcome.
What is your favorite sound?
Rainfall.
Yeah. I know. Wouldn't that be great? We're in dire need of it. It was like, you want to run out in it, you know. What is your least favorite sound?
My least favorite sound, I haven't thought about that before. I would say probably hail hitting my roof.
Yeah, there's that.
Since we had the recent roof repair.
Oh, yeah. Unless you're up, your insurance is good and you're ready to get a new
thank
roof.
goodness.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Fabulously successful orthopedic surgeon. What other profession would you like to have tried?
I'm a sports junkie.
Yeah.
I mean, I really wanted to be a sports journalist. And my wife keeps telling me I still can be.
Yeah.
You know, I can, do what you're doing here
Oh,
and
yeah.
create something like that.
Yeah, have a sports
And-
podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I used to have a radio show actually in Palm Springs. And it was a sports talk show,
How
not a
fun.
medical talk show. I did that too, but the sports
Yeah.
talk show was way more fun than the medical talk show for me. But now actually I want to tap back into my writing abilities. And once upon a time I was a pretty good writer, so that's my goal for my next career now that I'm almost grown up.
Okay. All right. Well, I love to have authors on, so anytime, you know where to come. What job, though, do you know you would not want to do? No thanks.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I think being a coroner, I would never want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's necessary. I mean,
It is.
it's
Yeah,
got to figure some of that stuff out. But yeah, that would be.
I think that would be tough.
You like your patients alive.
I do, alive and flourishing.
Amen. All right, one last question. What do you want to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
We're glad to have you.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that I got this chance to sit with you, Dr. Raj Sinha, and it's just amazing what's happening there at Advent Health in Killeen, and of course you're taking new patients, I guess.
Absolutely.
Anybody
Yeah.
got a need for a new joint? You can fix them up.
And remember, the joint is the end of the road. We have a lot of things we can do before
Right.
you need surgery.
Right, and yeah, but it's good to know someone who's done about 10,000 of these kind of procedures. But yeah, it's just been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really
And
enjoyed it.
Thank you for being with us for Central Texas Life. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder. This has been a Rogue Media Network production.